Hello again, everyone. As you may remember, my name is Lauren Bizzacchi, and I'm one of your teaching assistants here for the Constitutional Law Coursera class. I'm a third-year student at Yale Law School, and I actually am taking the opportunity today to join a librarian here at Yale Law School, Mike Widener. Now, he is the head librarian for Yale Law School's Rare Book Collection. And we're here today to look at some of the primary sources as well as secondary sources related to the Constitution that Yale has in its rare book collection. Now, many of you have expressed comments and questions about some of these other sources related to the Constitution. Specifically, you've asked about the Federalist Papers and some of the state ratifying conventions. And so we've prepared a set of some books that you might be interested in, and we hope that you'll take this opportunity to learn more about our Constitution and maybe even explore a local library yourself. Now, the first book we have here is a debate about one of the state constitution ratifying conventions. Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Sure. At first, thanks for coming, Lauren. And this is a collection we want people to use, so you're welcome to come and use the collection. This first example we have here is the first edition of the debates of the ratifying convention in Massachusetts. The convention took place in 1788. The book came out in 1788. So it came out very soon after the convention was over. And it consists really of nothing but newspaper reports. And the people who published the book were two newspapers. So they put their material together that they'd already reported in the newspapers, compiled it, and got it out to the reading public in a book form. And this tells us a couple of things about the text itself. Newspaper publishers are pretty good judges of their market. They have a wide readership, and they felt probably that this book was going to have a wide readership. And because of the nature of the ratification process, they were probably thinking this may even have a market outside of just Massachusetts. How about the other states that have not yet taken a vote on ratifying the Constitution? This is a way for Massachusetts to have an influence on the other states. So it's interesting in that respect, looking at it from a business and marketing standpoint and what that tells about the process behind it, the whole ratification process.
Now, in Professor Amar's lectures, he really emphasizes that the state ratifying conventions had a lower bar for people to vote for the ratification of the Constitution. And what that means is more people could vote for this than they could vote for anything else in the past. Wow. And so I can see why having these printed in the newspapers for the common people that have never had the opportunity to vote would be really beneficial.
Sure, absolutely. And again, newspapers are great judges of markets like this because they have to sell to the common people. So yeah, I think it's a great point. Just show you just a few. I mean, there's extensive debates. And again, these are newspaper sources. You're never sure how exactly accurate they are, but they're probably they had practice at these things. This is one example here, the debate about a federal district, meaning what we now know of as the District of Columbia. And I know in reading this, one of the delegates speculates, is this to protect the legislators, the governors, from insult, from people that are unhappy with what they're doing. That's why. So anyway, this is one example of some of the debates, and a lot of the issues that were debated here are of interest even today. The debates about slavery, how you were going to count votes, apportionment, all these things, the judiciary, all these things were important at the time.
Some of the students actually were interested in debates about slavery and representation and vote counting, and so they could actually go to either internet or primary sources at their own libraries and read more about these debates?
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of them have a lot of echoes with current events today. So it also makes them of interest. When we come to the back of the book here, what you see here is the final vote tally. You have all the votes of all the delegates, their names, how they voted, and the kind of the ratifying language. And you see here, signed in type, you see John Hancock.
Oh.
The proverbial John Hancock appears right there on as the president.
That's his John Hancock.
That's his John Hancock in type. So you see this. So this is and this is also kind of important as a public record of sorts. Not that this was an official record, but this shows that there was an official vote, that the convention went through steps to make their decision official. What's very interesting also is at the very end, you have about 2.5 pages. These are just statements of the people who voted nay, and they're saying, yes, I voted against this. This was not only my belief, but the belief of the people who sent me to the convention to represent them. But they're saying also, but we recognize this is a legitimate process, that we abide by it, and we can now count on us to support the Constitution from now on out. So they're ratifying, in essence, the process that they just participated in, even though they voted no.
Well, as Professor Amar outlined, 9 of the 13 states needed to ratify this Constitution through their state delegations before it would come into effect. Now that we've talked a little bit about the state ratifying conventions, I'd like to show you an early version, an early copy of the Constitution after it's been ratified. So next we have an early copy of a printed version of the Constitution. Now it's contained in a really large book. Mike, can you tell us a little bit about what this book is and who might have access to it?
Yes, this book is a collection of Connecticut statutes, session laws. And we can see here, this is the Acts and Laws of Connecticut from 1784, all post-independence. But there's several volumes. There's several books bound together into one.
And what is at the front of this book?
Well, that's what makes this book really interesting. This little pamphlet at the beginning is a printing of the Constitution of the United States. It's undated, but it's a very early printing, and that's acknowledged in a lot of the early bibliographies. And at the bottom, this is actually a relic of the ratification process here in Connecticut, because you see here the statement at the bottom, in the name of the people of the state of Connecticut, and they ratify it, and it's dated Hartford, January 9th, 1788. So this probably came out very soon afterwards.
And I'd like to point out just one more thing about this before we move on, and that is the text itself, the size of the preamble versus the size of the original text of the Constitution, the articles of the Constitution. And as you can see, the text of the preamble is almost double the size of the articles. And that really highlights what Professor Amar has highlighted in his lectures to you, which is that we, the people of the United States, ordain this Constitution. And the preamble highlights the importance of democracy in our system. Well, now we've looked at an early copy of the Constitution, and I'd like to take a look at one more prized piece of the rare book collection here at Yale, and that is the Federalist Paper. Lastly, I have one of the jewels of the Yale Law School's rare book collection, and that is the first edition of the Federalist. Mike, what can you tell us about this first edition?
Well, it's a great book. One of the classics of political science in the world. The Federalist began also as a collection of newspaper articles. It's
so the people had access.
That's
to
right.
These
they
arguments.
had access to it. You can actually think of it really as a piece of political propaganda. This was a sales job for selling the Constitution, and so it came out in 2 volumes, but not at the same time. The first volume collects essays that had already been published in the newspaper. The second volume, which came out a couple of months later, has some others that appeared in the newspaper and some that appear in the book form for the first time.
So those weren't available for the people to read at the ratification?
Yes, yeah. Well, it depends on when ratification took place, but they were in circulation. So either in book form or as newspaper. So it's an extremely important book. It's a piece of political propaganda. They're selling the Constitution. They're trying to convince people that this Constitution that's been passed is worthy of ratification. It's the best way for the nation to go forward. So it's a sales job. And so, and this book has been enormously influential. People still are arguing over it today. There's been dozens and dozens and dozens of editions of the Federalist. It's still important in debates and so forth to this day. And just as a work of political science, it's really a monument in world literature.
So at the time, we didn't know who actually wrote these pieces?
Another thing about this the first edition, is we still don't have the authors' names appearing here. We don't know that it's, at least not in print, that it's Hamilton and Jay and Madison who are the authors of these essays. And there's something else, there's a couple of other special things about our copy of the first edition of the Federalist that I'd like to show you. Our copy is still in its original kind of very primitive form. These are cheap, temporary pasteboard covers that normally would have been replaced. This is probably how the book looked like when it was purchased from the bookseller. The pages are untrimmed. For collectors go gaga over these books because they're still, as close to original condition as possible, and that's why we're really happy to have this copy. The other thing about this copy, it was owned by General Samuel McClellan, a Connecticut man who was a veteran of the battles of Lexington and Concord and Bunker Hill, and one of his descendants donated this book to us in the 1940s. So we're very, very happy and honored to have this copy.
Mike, this was a great opportunity for me and for our students that are watching online to see some of the jewels of the Yale Law Library Rare Book Collection. I'd like to thank you for your time.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
And sharing this experience with everyone. And
sure.
I know that I speak for myself and probably you as well to say that librarians love showing people books. They love talking about the books. Mike is just one of many at public libraries as well as university libraries all around, and I'd encourage all of you to explore some of the resources that your libraries have. And who knows, maybe you'll stumble on something that people have overlooked in the past, like the size of a text of the preamble or anything else. And so many great thinkers and scholars learn from the primary sources, and we hope that you explore them as well. I look forward to seeing you all and talking to you on the discussion boards and in the future with our bonus footage. Have a great day.